Thomas, I want to throw something in that you raised about governance to make it even more complicated for those of you watching. One of the problems for Europeans, it seems to me, is that their view of the world, as you say, it's a life view, the denial argument being made. You know, if your worldview is now under threat, you're going to behave and ignore things for a while. But part of the problem with doing that is that if you believe that everyone's going to share sovereignty for the greater good, I mean, this is the basis of the Monnet system of functionalism, and you look at who's rising as a power, I can't think of more Westphalian states than Russia, than the BRICS. Think about them individually, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. The one thing they have in common, almost nothing, is that they don't want to share sovereignty, that they're rising powers that see this as a way to enmesh them in a system created by Westerners that's kept them down. And they will lecture you in Washington to that effect many times. The Chinese certainly are adept at that lecture. And so we have to get beyond, which is an emotional reaction. It might not even be true, but they see themselves, this wasn't created by us, you've always kept us down. Now is our time in the sun, to use Kaiser-Reich terminology. It's our day in the sun, and we don't want to share sovereignty. Well, from a European point of view, this is a catastrophe, philosophically, because the world isn't moving to become, as Mark Leonard said, an EU for everyone. It's exactly the opposite. Westphalia is alive and well. And it seems to me, if you don't get your head around that China isn't going to behave sharing sovereignty particularly easily. You're not going to get to the global governance stuff, even if we in the West all get it right, because we know it's not sufficient anymore. We need these new people on board. How do we get beyond that?
The important point to make here, John, is that I think we have, as a European Union, given up on the idea of successfully exporting the model of pooled and shared sovereignty even before the economic crisis. Okay. The reality is EU enlargement fatigue has set in well beyond 2008, and well beyond we have seen the floor drop from underneath our economies. I'm not sure. So when you start looking at a solution, you have to look beyond simply psychological shocks and a crisis. You have to look at why is it that we have lost the confidence that our model can successfully be exported. That's part of it. Why is it that we have lost the desire to try? Why is it that we have lost the desire to make the trade-offs between allowing some proportion of foreign workers to come to the country, but in exchange of that particular country actually developing, growing, prosperous, and rich, thus allowing our own companies to make a lot of money doing business. All those trade-offs, the government's ability to articulate those trade-offs and their willingness to do that, all that has disappeared long before the crisis. There's a reason I look around at some of the Rem in particular, because I think Holland is an interesting case study of a country that has been a staunch supporter of enlargement, and in recent years has changed. It's not for Central Europeans to make the argument, because they believe in exporting the model of pooled and shared sovereignty is still very much alive and kicking, if for nothing else than for hard national security reasons. There's no better way of providing for the security and safety and peace of Central Europe than having a peaceful and democratic and fully integrated Ukraine, and ideally even Russia on our borders. So there, the idea is still alive and well. But I think we would have to, if you want to put that idea of exporting the model of pooled sovereignty back on the table, I think we have to look at why it's failed long before the economic crisis. What is it that fueled enlargement fatigue? And the true answer is I don't know. I'm hoping Rem could perhaps enlighten us.
Well, the short answer is no, I can't.
Good soundbite.
And now you'll explain why.
The case of the Netherlands is very typical. I think it has to do with this tension of the population not entirely understanding why enlargement was or is a good thing, and that at a certain moment leads to a backlash when it is, for right or wrong, put to a referendum to get the opinion of the voter on European politics. I'm phrasing it a bit wordy, but what I'm saying is that Europe as a project has been the prerogative of leaders, of political leaders. Especially in my country, it hasn't been put to a ballot issue. Up until the referendum in, 2008. And at that moment, It wasn't necessarily whether it had to do with enlargement or the Constitution or greater European economic integration. It was simply the population saying, we don't agree not being consulted. And that's what I see as one of the predicaments of liberal democracies today is this is the price to pay of political leadership. We just talked about political leadership versus political followership. And the case of the Netherlands, I think, shows very clearly what the price is of sticking your neck out and being one of the major proponents of further European integration without having the ability or without taking the time and the energy and the political difficulties involved to bring the population along with that reasoning. I remember being here and there were public discussions held about European integration. There were two representatives from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and five passers-by, and that was it. It wasn't a public town hall meeting about the virtues or the vices of European integration. It was never an issue of the public to discuss. And this is where I'm actually interested to also hear your views with respect to non-liberal countries, say the autocracies, China, Russia, and India as well to a certain extent, which are very state-controlled experiments in capitalism, in becoming new emerging centers of power. Would they suffer under similar backlashes as we've experienced here in Europe with respect to the European integration project?
Klaus, then Eric, then David.
I think we should not forget when we discuss issues such as this, that we all knew that the simultaneous approach of widening the European Union and deepening the integration was a high-risk operation. But we saw no other alternative but to do it that way, because we didn't want to lose countries which were looking for orientation after the breakdown of the Warsaw Pact. So it was presumably this historic situation which forced us into something of which many of us said it cannot work. And hadn't we had the time and had our new partners had the patience to wait 5, 6, 7 years with a given perspective, you will become members, then we might have been able to integrate deeper first and then ask them to join. But that opportunity, I think, did not exist for those who had to take actions at the time. And we are now suffering from this mistake. Whether the remedy could be, as some people suggested right now in some European countries, that we should return to a smaller integration unit as a nucleus for future widening, I don't know. The risk associated with this is that the European Union might fall into pieces. And I think that is something which has such a wide dimension, also an impact on our American partners, that this decision seems to be really a high risk proposition.
Eric?